We'll be joined on the phone by a former wrestler who says that he was sexually molested by wrestling executives. We'll start with Vince McMahon. What do you make of all this?
I really don't know what to make of it.
You have no concept that any of this was going on? No idea?
No idea whatsoever.
In 1992, allegations would be brought against Vince McMahon and the WWF.
Where did this break? I mean, where did you hear about it? Who broke this story? How are the charges? Why do we know this?
Well, all I know is what I read in the newspaper and haven't been able to respond to. We've started our own investigation, our own internal investigation.
Because no one has gone to a police agency and said, I was forced to have sex?
No one has filed one single charge, not one single charge with the police, with anyone.
It is widely viewed that this should have likely marked the downfall of McMahon's reign.
Bruno Sammartino, famed wrestler, former champion. He's in Pittsburgh. What do you make of all this, Bruno?
Well, first of all, Larry, it's ironic that people like Pat Patterson, Terry Garvin, Mel Phillips have all resigned. They've all resigned from this organization, supposedly, because I question that too.
The living legend, Bruno Sammartino, had a 25-year feud with McMahon. In '92, he spilled on CNN.
But as far as McMahon being so shocked and surprised at all this, we go way back, for example, when one of his people, this Mel Phillips, was, when we were doing a taping in Allentown or Hamburg, we're in a parking lot. There have been people who come forward who caught him with an 11-year-old boy having sex in a car. And this fella had a reputation for many years, and not only has he remained with the organization, even though this was brought to the attention of the McMahons, but this guy's flourished because he's been with the organization for a lot of years. There's been talk for a long time, and it's no secret that McMahon is trying to say that he's shocked by this all.
Wrestling journalist David Bixenspan would recap for Wrestling Inc. Garvin and Patterson engaged in a casting couch culture with male wrestlers and other personnel, while also enabling Phillips to use his job to groom an underage who he brought in as day laborers on his crew. McMahon, as many who have an ego as big as his, fired back in this way on live television.
It must have been flagrant then, Bruno. I mean, you were one of the top stars in the WWF. Surely you must have performed some of these sexual acts that they're being alleged to get to where you were. Is that right?
Here's McMahon, who is saying that this is all shocking, nobody's come forward. There's this young man here by the name of Tom Cole, who, for McMahon's lawyers, have been negotiating for the last 3-4 days, or maybe even longer, in trying to stop this fella from filing. But I guess the money that they're offering isn't enough.
Are you saying that someone's trying to file charges and you're trying to prevent them?
I'll tell you what I'm saying.
He would evade the question.
Gentlemen, Murray Hodgson, hired by Vince McMahon, here on my left for the TV job. You were the commentator. And then fired 2 months later. What happened? Can you specifically, and without taking us around the world, tell us, what is it that happened to you?
I wouldn't sleep with the vice president of operations, so they fired me.
Is the vice president of operations one of those who resigned?
Yes, he is.
Barry Orton. Here's Barry O, the former professional wrestler. You accused an executive grabbing your crotch, legs, and chest and wouldn't stop.
Yeah, well, I was in between the two of them in the back seat of the car.
There would be more allegations, more trouble, and more resignations. From Bixenspan once more in March of '92, McMahon conceded he fired Phillips to the Post, which he would sue for defamation. In it, McMahon never disputed what he said to the Post, which was, and I quote, Phillips's relationship with kids seemed peculiar and unnatural. In 2020, when contacted by Business Insider for a story about the Ring Boy scandal, WWE attorney Jerry McDevitt ignored all questions about McMahon's calls with Mushnick and Meltzer. More from Bixenspan. In September '93, the FBI had a videotape of Phillips doing what was alleged by his accusers. In a separate memo, the FBI disregarded the tape because they perceived there to be too many alternate angles.
Next thing I know, Vince unzipped his pants and he took my hand and he kept putting my hand on his penis. He started telling me that he knew I didn't have a job. I had left Frito-Lay because of him. He knew that I had a daughter and that he could either make me or break me. The choice was mine. And when I said no, he said that I'd better satisfy him. And he started pulling my pants off. And he pulled me on top of him. And he satisfied himself through intercourse.
Rita Chatterton spoke with Geraldo Rivera on Now It Can Be Told. Vince would again sue for defamation, only to drop it a year later. In 2006, a police report will be filed that McMahon showed explicit photos of himself to an employee of Tanzabar, a tanning salon in Boca Raton, Florida. The clerk told this to police, including the allegation that McMahon groped her. She managed to break away. He would not be charged, however. In 2018, the Daily Beast wrote of the alleged details of how McMahon followed the attendant to a back room and closed the door. According to documents, McMahon grabbed her and tried to kiss her. She said she put both of her hands on his chest and tried to push him away. McMahon continued to grab her, touching her waist and buttocks and attempting to lift up her button-down shirt while rubbing her with the backside of his arms, she would tell the cops. The Sun-Sentinel would go on to report that McMahon would not be charged with the citation being insufficient evidence, though the police report would state in part by investigator J.M. Clare, there is probable cause to believe that Vince McMahon did actually and intentionally touch against the will of redacted contrary to, and they list the Florida statute. Bix and Span would file a public records request. However, he was informed that the records and files were destroyed. And the reason was, and the response he got, citing Florida case law. In 2022, the Wall Street Journal's explosive piece surfaced after the WWE's board hired an independent law firm where anonymous emails were sent alleging wrongdoing by McMahon and top executive/confidant John Laurinaitis, who served as head of talent relations. It turned up a private $3 million settlement. From journalists Joe Palazzolo and Ted Mann, the first email sent to board members on March 30th alleged that Vince, 76, initially hired the woman at a salary of $100K but increased it to $200K after beginning a sexual relationship with her. The email to the board also alleged that McMahon gave her like a toy to Laurinaitis. The board is investigating the allegations in the email, the people familiar with the inquiry said. One email to the board would read, "My friend was so scared, so she quit after Vince and lawyer Jerry paid her millions of dollars to shut up," the initial email to the board said, referring to McMahon's longtime lawyer, Mr. McDevitt, who negotiated the deal, according to people familiar with the sitch. Then we would learn of 3 more settlements that were uncovered by Palazzolo, Mann, and Joe Flint at the Journal. The totals even higher. It was, they report, an act of suppressing allegations of sexual misconduct and infidelity. The previously unreported settlements include a $7.5 million pact with a former wrestler who alleged that McMahon coerced her into giving him oral and then demoted her, and ultimately declined to renew her contract in 2005 after she resisted further sexual encounters. According to people familiar with the matter, the wrestler and her attorney approached McMahon in 2018 and negotiated the payment in return for her silence, the people said. In a pattern some may notice, a WWE contractor presented the company with unsolicited nude photos of McMahon she reported receiving from him and alleged that he had sexually harassed her on the job, according to people familiar with the woman's 2008 NDA. Mr. McMahon agreed to pay her roughly $1 million, those people said. Lastly, in a 2006 agreement, a former manager who had worked 10 years for McMahon before he allegedly initiated a sexual relationship with her was paid $1 million to keep quiet about it, according to people familiar with the deal. And yet there were more allegations against McMahon that came to light. Paul London would accuse McMahon of sexually pursuing Ashley Mazzaro, who would die by unaliving herself in 2019. In 2022, the Journal would uncover yet more allegations against McMahon. A spa manager in Southern California claims he assaulted her back in 2011. Which brings us to the most recent wave of news. From the Wall Street Journal, Janel Grant, a former employee at the wrestling firm's headquarters, said in a suit filed Thursday she was abused and sexually exploited by McMahon while he was chief executive. She alleged that McMahon lured her with promises of career advancement, and then he allegedly exploited her and trafficked her to other men inside the company. Grant signed an NDA in 2022 in which McMahon agreed to pay $3 million for her not to discuss the relationship or disparage him. The WWE would receive an anonymous tip in 2022 about the relationship, and thus the board investigation began, which uncovered other payments by the CEO to women. Janel Grant's lawsuit said Vince stopped making payments under the 2022 deal after the initial $1 million installment. The suit seeks to void the agreement and unspecified financial damages. McMahon's reps and attorneys have said he will fight the charges.
Vince has been a guy who's been mired in controversy for much of, like I'd say, for on and off for the last 35 years. But this is, by far the worst.
The accusations by former employee Janel Grant against McMahon and another former WWE executive are detailed and explicit, some so graphic we've chosen not to share them. Among those we can, McMahon began sharing sexually explicit photographs and videos of Ms. Grant, including pornographic content he recorded with other men. And McMahon recruited individuals to have sexual relations with Ms. Grant.
The lawsuit filed in a Connecticut federal court describes in graphic and grotesque detail Janel Grant's accounts of interactions with McMahon. She alleged that Vince and another WWE executive locked her in an office in their headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut on June 15, 2021, and took turns sexually assaulting her while the other staff were working.
I've said before, I don't think he can survive this, and been wrong. But this one, I don't think he can survive this because it's too much on the heels of everything else that's come out.
The suit alleges on that workday, McMahon locked Grant inside a private locker room at WWE's headquarters and forced himself on her. Later in the day, Vince's assistant gave Grant $15,000 in gift cards to Bloomingdale's. In addition, texts were uncovered where McMahon allegedly said to Grant, "I'm the only one who owns you and controls who I want to blank you." Grant claims the board investigation was a complete and utter sham, including that she was never asked to be interviewed throughout the process. Grant and her attorneys claim that after being introduced and having discussions about a potential job, McMahon greeted her in his underwear and repeatedly asked for hugs. Then the suit said he pressured her into sexual activities in return for employment and warned her to stay quiet about their interactions. She was hired but felt the job was unearned. As time went on, McMahon began forcefully using sex toys on Grant and named some of them after his roster of WWE wrestlers. They caused damage to her, the suit claims, including Grant trying to end the relationship. Some of the details are as follows. McMahon sent her to a surgeon where she did not receive a single bill. He transferred her to work under Laurinaitis, and they had sex before work many times. They had a threesome with Laurinaitis and McMahon, and per the suit, took turns restraining her for the other while saying no means yes and take it be. A huge revelation is this. In July 2021, the suit says McMahon instructed Grant to create personalized sexual content for a WWE superstar he was trying to re-sign. Although the suit did not name him, it is described as both a UFC fighter and WWE talent. People familiar with the matter identified that person as Brock Lesnar. The suit said McMahon shared the explicit photos with Lesnar and informed Grant that he likes what he sees. After the star agreed to a new contract within the WWE, McMahon texted Grant in August 2021 to say that part of the deal was blanking you. That December, McMahon gave Grant's personal cell to the WWE star, says the suit. The wrestler asked her to send a video of herself urinating, the suit said, and after she did, he called her a B. That same month, per the suit, the star expressed a desire to set a playdate, but a snowstorm would halt those plans. Lastly, from the Wall Street Journal, the lawsuit seeks a judgment that the NDA is invalid under state and federal law and compensatory and punitive damages under other laws, including the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. All the credit goes to the fine journalists who have broken these stories and brought this to light. They are Khadijah Savtar, Joe Palazzolo, Ted Mann, David Bixenspan, and others who have shown relentless journalism to uncover the truth. Shout out to Jerry Janik for requesting the story to me on Twitter. There is so many hours in a day and only so much that we see. If there are any stories that you would like us to cover, do deep dives on, get at me on Twitter, on Instagram and TikTok. Send me a DM. Appreciate everybody watching and appreciate your input as always.